The alien woman rushed into my hut to escape a blizzard, but she was... The wind howled across the frozen plain, carrying sharp flakes of ice that cut like tiny knives. The sky was dark with heavy clouds, and the sun barely showed through the gray gloom. Ethan huddled inside his small hut, rubbing his hands together to stay warm. The fire in the hearth flickered, but the cold was relentless. His clothes were layered, his boots thick, yet he could feel the chill creeping into his bones. Outside, the storm was merciless, covering everything in white and turning the world into a blur of snow and shadow. Ethan had been here alone for weeks, monitoring the icy planet for signs of useful minerals and conducting experiments on the local flora. The research had been promising, but the isolation was beginning to weigh heavily on him. Even the wind seemed to mock his solitude, roaring louder with each passing hour. He checked his instruments again, ensuring they were functioning despite the storm. The lights on the small panels blinked steadily, but the thought of spending another night trapped in this frozen wasteland made his chest tighten. Suddenly, through the swirl of snow outside, a movement caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just another shadow in the storm, perhaps a trick of the wind. But then he saw it again, a figure stumbling toward his hut. He squinted, trying to make out what it was. The snow whipped against the windows and visibility was almost zero, but there was no mistake. Someone was out there, struggling against the blizzard. Ethan's heart raced. Visitors were rare on this planet, very rare. The nearest outpost was hundreds of kilometers away, and the odds of someone arriving here by accident were practically impossible. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside, bracing against the biting wind. The snow hit him in waves, but he forced himself forward, moving toward the figure. As he got closer, he could see that it was not human. The being was humanoid in shape, but unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Her skin glowed faintly with a soft, bluish light that seemed to pulse with each breath. Her hair, long and almost transparent, whipped around her face in the storm. Her clothes were strange, made from materials that shimmered despite the snow and frost. She stumbled, almost collapsing into the snow, and Ethan rushed forward, grabbing her arm to keep her from falling. "Come inside, quickly!" he shouted, struggling to make his voice heard over the wind. With effort, he pulled her toward the hut and managed to get the door closed behind them. The warm air hit her face, and she shivered violently, hugging herself. Ethan tore off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. She looked at him with wide, bright eyes, full of fear and exhaustion. Ethan noticed small cuts and bruises along her arms where the storm had battered her, and he realized she must have been wandering in the blizzard for hours. Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but cautious. She made a sound, a soft, musical noise that he could not understand. She pointed to herself, then to the sky, and then made a sweeping motion with her hand. Ethan frowned, realizing she was trying to communicate something urgent. "You need to rest. You're hurt," he said, kneeling beside her. He helped her sit by the fire, checking the injuries he could see. Her skin was warm despite the cold outside, and he noticed a strange device strapped to her wrist, blinking faintly. He had no idea what it was, but it looked important. The wind outside grew louder, rattling the hut as though trying to push them apart. Ethan kept talking, hoping she would understand, trying to calm her. "You're safe here. Just stay by the fire. I'll help you." She watched him carefully, then slowly nodded, her movements hesitant but deliberate. Ethan realized she trusted him enough to follow his lead, at least for now. He fetched blankets and wrapped her in them, making a small nest by the fire. Her breathing began to slow as the warmth seeped into her body, and Ethan allowed himself a moment to study her more closely. Her features were delicate, almost ethereal, but there was a strength in her eyes. She was not helpless. Even exhausted, there was an alertness in her posture, a readiness to react if needed. Ethan could sense that she had survived far worse than this blizzard, and it made him respect her even more. He returned to his workbench, gathering medical supplies. Bandages, antiseptics, and some pain relievers, simple human tools, but enough to help stabilize her. As he cleaned a small cut on her arm, she flinched but did not pull away. Ethan spoke softly, explaining what he was doing, hoping the sound of his voice would reassure her. Hours passed as the storm continued outside. The hut creaked and groaned under the force of the wind, but inside a fragile calm had settled. The alien woman began to relax, her breathing evening out. She finally spoke, though not in words Ethan understood. Her voice was musical like a song, but the meaning was lost to him. He listened carefully, trying to catch any patterns or clues, but it was like nothing he had ever heard before. Despite the language barrier, Ethan found a way to communicate. He drew simple symbols on a piece of paper, showing her what he was asking. She pointed to herself, then to the device on her wrist, and finally to the door. Ethan realized she was explaining where she came from and perhaps what had happened to her. "You're running from something?" he asked, guessing from her gestures. She nodded, her glowing eyes widening. Ethan's mind raced. If she was being pursued, the blizzard was the least of her problems. There were dangers here that he could not even imagine. He decided to investigate the device strapped to her wrist. It was small, metallic, and clearly sophisticated beyond anything human technology could produce. As he examined it, a faint glow pulsed, responding to his touch. The alien watched intently, her trust in him evident as she allowed him to manipulate it. Ethan realized it might be a tracking device or a communication tool. Either way, it was important. The night deepened, and the storm showed no sign of letting up. Ethan kept a fire burning and monitored the wind outside, making small adjustments to keep the hut insulated. Every so often, he glanced at her. She had curled up near the hearth, her glowing skin casting soft light across the walls. He could not help but feel a sense of awe at her presence, a strange mixture of fear and wonder. As he worked, he realized how unprepared he had been for this encounter. Alone on a frozen planet, he had never imagined a visitor, let alone an alien, injured and fleeing unknown dangers. Yet, despite the danger and uncertainty, he felt a sense of purpose. Helping her, keeping her alive, was the most important task in the universe at that moment. The hours passed slowly. Ethan kept talking, explaining in simple words who he was, what he did, and where he lived. She listened, her expressions shifting from suspicion to curiosity. Occasionally, she responded with sounds and gestures, forming a strange dialogue that neither fully understood but both valued. In that tiny hut, far from any civilization, they had found a way to connect. Eventually, the storm outside began to ease, though the wind still rattled the walls. Ethan stood by the window, looking out at the endless white expanse, and wondered how far she had traveled to reach him. Whatever her story, he knew it was important. He would help her survive, no matter the cost. Finally, as the fire burned low and the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, the alien woman moved closer to him. She extended her hand, and he took it gently. Though words were absent, the gesture was clear. Trust had been earned. Ethan felt a thrill of hope. Perhaps together they could face whatever dangers lay ahead. The blizzard had brought her to him, but it was something else entirely that would decide their fate. And in the quiet of that small, warm hut, human and alien shared a moment that neither would forget. A beginning forged in snow, danger, and unexpected connection. Ethan knew this night was only the start. Outside, the frozen world waited. Beyond it, threats he could not imagine lurked in the void. And yet, for the first time in a long while, he felt ready. Ready to face the unknown. Ready to protect this strange, glowing life that had stumbled into his world. As the morning light began to filter through the snow-laden windows, he prepared himself. The storm might have ended, but the real journey was only beginning. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that humans had a power that no blizzard, no alien danger, and no unknown force could ever take away. The blizzard had passed, but the world outside was still cold and silent. Ethan stood at the window, watching the snow glisten under the pale light of the morning. The alien woman sat by the fire, her glowing skin dimmer in the daylight but still radiant. She was examining the strange gadgets he had scattered around, touching them with careful, deliberate movements. Ethan noticed how quickly she learned from observation, her fingers adjusting knobs and levers as though she understood their function without needing explanations. He approached her slowly. "Do you understand how this works?" he asked. She looked up, her luminous eyes bright with curiosity. She tilted her head, then pointed to a small solar panel he had set near the window. She gestured toward herself and then toward the panel, making a motion that suggested she wanted to understand how it could help her. Ethan smiled. "I'll show you," he said, and he demonstrated how to connect the panel to a small battery he had charged overnight. She watched closely, her eyes widening as the lights flickered on. For the first time, she made a soft sound that could almost be called laughter. It was musical and light, and it made Ethan pause. He had never heard anything like it before, but it felt friendly. Hours passed as he taught her more about his equipment. She adapted quickly, picking up tools he hadn't even considered teaching. Ethan realized that despite her fragile appearance, she was incredibly intelligent and resourceful. Her hands moved with precision and care, adjusting settings and stabilizing devices in ways even he hadn't expected. As they worked, Ethan noticed something unusual. She had scars along her forearms, faint but visible. He hesitated, then asked, "Were you hurt before the storm?" She looked down and then back at him, making a series of gestures, hands pressed to her side, then to her back, then holding her head. It was clear she had been injured during her flight across the planet. Ethan nodded. "You must have been running from someone or something," he said. She stiffened slightly, her eyes widening, and she nodded in response. He could feel the tension radiating from her, a fear that went beyond the blizzard or the cold. Whatever she had fled, it was dangerous, and it was still out there. He decided it was time to learn more. He took out a small notebook and began drawing symbols, a circle for her, a line for the path she had traveled, and jagged shapes for the dangers she had faced. She watched the drawings carefully and then added her own marks, pointing to locations on the sketches and making gestures that indicated movement and escape. Ethan studied them, trying to piece together the story. She had been scouting a region of space far from human travel, gathering information about a hostile fleet. They were powerful and advanced, and she had barely escaped their pursuit. Her people relied on stealth and intelligence, and she had been a critical part of their mission. Ethan realized that she had risked her life to survive, and in that moment he respected her even more. "You're brave," he said softly. She tilted her head, unsure how to respond. Words were not necessary. Her actions had already told him everything he needed to know. She had survived, adapted, and kept going, even when the odds were against her. Ethan spent the rest of the day helping her recover. He prepared food and warm drinks, simple human meals, but enough to give her strength. She tried to eat, but her metabolism was different, and she only took small bites. He watched her closely, noting how she adjusted to the new environment, how she tested the tools and devices he offered, and how she observed every detail around her. As night fell, the alien woman moved to the window, looking out at the frozen landscape. Ethan joined her, and they stood side by side in silence. The storm had left everything blanketed in white, and the silence was almost complete, broken only by the occasional crack of ice shifting in the distance. Ethan could feel the weight of the world pressing down, and yet there was a strange calmness in that moment. "I need to know more about you," Ethan said finally. She turned to him, her glowing eyes meeting his. She seemed to understand, though she made no sound. He gestured toward the device on her wrist. "This, can it tell me where you're from?" She shook her head slightly, then tapped the device. It lit up, displaying small holographic symbols that Ethan could not interpret. He leaned closer, studying the strange language. There was a logic to it, a pattern, but it was completely alien. Still, he noted details, hoping that someday he could understand it. Over the next few hours, they experimented together. Ethan showed her how to convert the energy from his solar panels into a power source for her device. She watched closely, then tried it herself, adjusting circuits and wires with remarkable precision. Slowly, the device stabilized, its light pulsing steadily. She looked at Ethan and made a sound that could only mean gratitude. He nodded, feeling a warm sense of accomplishment. Their bond grew stronger with each passing moment. Words were not needed. Actions, gestures, and shared problem-solving became their language. Ethan realized that despite their differences, they could communicate in ways that mattered. She trusted him, and he respected her intelligence and courage. In the quiet of the hut, Ethan began to understand the alien woman's strengths. She was not only intelligent and resourceful, but also adaptable. She observed, learned, and implemented solutions quickly. She reminded him of why humans had survived against impossible odds, the ability to think, to improvise, and to keep going when others might give up. Late into the night, a faint sound outside caught Ethan's attention. He froze, listening. The wind had changed, carrying a low hum, almost mechanical. He glanced at her and she stiffened, her eyes narrowing. Whatever was out there, she recognized it instantly. She gestured for him to stay quiet, pointing to the door and making a subtle motion that meant danger. Ethan's mind raced. They were not alone. She had barely escaped her enemies before, and now they might have tracked her here. He moved closer to the door, keeping low, and peeked outside. The snow had begun to settle, but the faint outline of a small hovering drone glimmered in the moonlight. It scanned the area, its sensors sweeping back and forth. He whispered, "It's a scout. They're looking for you." She nodded, her glowing eyes intense with focus. They had to act quickly. Ethan grabbed a few tools and supplies, and together they devised a simple trap. Using his knowledge of mechanics and her understanding of alien tech, they rigged a device to interfere with the drone's sensors. Minutes later, the drone approached, its lights scanning the hut. Ethan held his breath as it passed near their trap. A soft click, a flash of light, and the drone twitched, then fell silent. She let out a sound of relief, and Ethan felt a surge of pride. They had worked together, combining human ingenuity and alien knowledge to survive. The danger had passed for now, but Ethan knew it was only temporary. Her pursuers were advanced, intelligent, and relentless. He would need to be even smarter, faster, and more resourceful to keep them safe. Yet, as he watched her recovering by the fire, he felt hope. Humans had always faced the impossible, and somehow they had always found a way. Throughout the night, they continued to plan. She drew symbols in the dust, showing paths and escape routes. Ethan studied them carefully, thinking through every possibility. They discussed strategies in gestures and simple sounds, forming a silent alliance built on trust and respect. By dawn, the alien woman had regained much of her strength. She tested the devices around the hut, adapting them to her needs, and Ethan assisted where he could. Their teamwork was seamless, a dance of understanding and cooperation. He marveled at her abilities and realized that humanity was not alone in the universe in terms of cleverness. But humans had a unique spark of creativity that even the most advanced aliens might underestimate. As the sun rose higher, casting a pale light over the snow, Ethan felt a new determination. The blizzard had brought her to him, and now it was up to him to help her survive, to protect her, and perhaps to learn from her in return. Together they would face whatever dangers came next. The day stretched ahead, full of uncertainty and risk. But in that quiet hut in the heart of a frozen world, two beings, one human, one alien, had found a way to understand each other. And in that understanding lay the first seeds of an alliance that could change the course of their lives, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy. Ethan realized that survival was not just about strength or speed. It was about intelligence, adaptability, and courage. The alien woman embodied all these traits, and in turn, she was beginning to see the same qualities in him. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was becoming strong, forged in trust, danger, and shared effort. As night fell again, Ethan prepared for the next challenge. The storm may have passed, but the greater danger of her pursuers still loomed. They would need to be clever, brave, and relentless to survive. And Ethan knew, deep in his heart, that humans had a way of turning the impossible into reality. Together, they might just have a chance. The sun had barely risen above the icy horizon when Ethan and the alien woman began preparing for the day. The storm had left the world outside blanketed in snow, sharp and bright under the weak morning light. Ethan checked the hut carefully, inspecting his tools, devices, and any possible weak points in the walls. He had learned during the night that survival depended not only on courage but on preparation. Every detail mattered. The alien woman moved quietly, examining the small hut with careful gestures. She had begun to trust Ethan fully, and yet there was a constant alertness in her eyes. She scanned every corner, touching walls, studying the windows, and checking the devices Ethan had rigged. It was clear that even though she was tired, her mind was sharp. Ethan admired her determination. He realized that intelligence, quick thinking, and adaptability were far more powerful than raw strength. He handed her a small device, something he had rigged to amplify energy from his solar panels. She studied it, touched it with delicate fingers, and made a soft sound that he took as approval. She was learning quickly, adapting his human methods for her own use. It reminded him again of why humans had survived against impossible odds: the ability to improvise, to learn, and to act quickly under pressure. Suddenly, the soft hum of machinery interrupted the quiet. Ethan froze and glanced at the door. Outside, the faint shadow of movement passed over the snow. He realized immediately the scouts from her pursuers had found them. They were cautious, but their technology allowed them to detect even small traces of energy. He gestured to the alien woman, pointing to the back of the hut. She understood instantly and moved with him toward the hidden exit he had prepared. Ethan's mind raced as he considered their options. They could not stay here. The open snow would make them easy targets, but the hut offered no long-term safety. They needed a plan, and fast. Ethan's hands moved quickly, gathering supplies, small energy packs, a few improvised tools, and a blanket for warmth. The alien woman followed, carrying her own device. They stepped outside carefully, using the low sunlight and snow shadows for cover. The drone scout hovered above, its sensors scanning in a slow, methodical sweep. Ethan held his breath and whispered, "Wait for the right moment." Together, they moved silently across the snow. Ethan pointed toward a small ridge in the distance. If they could reach it, they could hide from the drone long enough to regroup. She nodded, her glowing skin dim under the sunlight, and matched his pace perfectly. It was remarkable how quickly she adapted to his movements, how they had developed a silent understanding without words. The drone passed directly above them, its sensors sweeping the snow. Ethan ducked instinctively, and the alien woman followed, crouching low. They pressed themselves against a small mound, barely breathing. The drone lingered for a moment, then moved on. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. She looked at him, her glowing eyes bright with quiet admiration, and he smiled. They had survived the first test. Once safely behind the ridge, Ethan pulled out a small map he had sketched the night before. The alien woman leaned over, pointing to symbols that represented danger zones, safe paths, and escape routes. Together, they planned their next move. The enemy was strong, but they were clever. Ethan realized that humans had a unique advantage, the ability to combine knowledge, creativity, and instinct in ways that could surprise even advanced aliens. They moved again, staying low and using natural snow formations for cover. Ethan rigged small alarms with wire and sensors, devices that would alert them to approaching drones or patrols. She watched carefully, learning each step and adapting quickly. Together, they created a defensive system using simple human tools and her advanced technology. It was a combination neither side would have expected. As the day wore on, the cold began to bite through their layers. Ethan noticed her shivering slightly and offered his coat. She shook her head but touched the coat, understanding the gesture of protection. Small moments like these reminded him that even in the face of danger, simple acts of humanity mattered. Her trust in him grew with each gesture, and he realized that they were no longer simply survivor and guest. They were allies. Hours later, they reached a small cluster of rocks that offered better concealment. Ethan set up a small perimeter, improvising barriers and traps. The alien woman assisted, placing devices with careful precision. They worked in silence, communicating through gestures and shared understanding. The bond between them had deepened to something unspoken but unbreakable. Ethan studied her closely during a quiet moment. Despite her alien appearance, her courage reminded him of humanity itself, resilient, adaptable, and clever. He could see the same spark in her that he recognized in himself. It was not brute force that would win this struggle, but intelligence, preparation, and determination. Humans had survived against impossible odds before, and he would prove it again today. As the sun began to set, shadows stretched across the frozen landscape. The sound of a low hum reached their ears again. The pursuers were returning. Ethan signaled to the alien woman, and they prepared the traps they had set. Small wires twitched under hidden snow, and improvised alarms were ready to activate. The first drone appeared over the ridge, scanning the area. Ethan's traps triggered, sending a pulse of interference that caused the drone to falter. It hovered briefly, its sensors glitching, then moved on. He exhaled quietly, but the danger was far from over. More drones were approaching, and soon they would be surrounded. He whispered, "We need to move further, quickly." She nodded, understanding without a word. Together they slipped into the shadows, moving across the frozen expanse with careful, calculated steps. Ethan relied on instinct and experience, while she adapted quickly, mimicking his movements and combining her alien knowledge with his human ingenuity. As they progressed, they encountered a natural ice formation that offered a narrow passage. Ethan led the way, carefully testing the ice to ensure it could hold their weight. The alien woman followed closely, her glowing skin illuminating the path just enough for him to see. They moved quietly, relying on trust and teamwork. Halfway through the passage, Ethan noticed faint tracks in the snow, signs that the pursuers were closer than they thought. He signaled to her, and they ducked into a small cavity in the ice wall. They waited, barely breathing, as the sounds of drones passed by above them. The alien woman touched his arm gently, a gesture of reassurance and gratitude. Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of respect for her bravery and composure. Once the danger had passed, they continued, moving deeper into the ice caves. Ethan realized that their survival depended on more than just hiding. They had to be proactive, using their intelligence to outsmart the enemy. He set up small devices that could disrupt tracking signals, while she assisted, her understanding of alien technology helping to enhance his human-made systems. Hours turned into a long, tense night. Ethan and the alien woman worked together tirelessly, repairing equipment, reinforcing traps, and planning their next move. The cold was relentless, but they were determined. Every step they took, every device they rigged, was a testament to their ingenuity and cooperation. They had become more than human and alien. They were a team capable of facing the unknown together. By the early morning, Ethan realized they had managed to create a safe zone within the ice caves. It was temporary, but it offered shelter from the drones and the harsh environment outside. The alien woman tested the perimeter, placing small devices to monitor for approaching threats. She had learned quickly, adapting human methods for her own use, and Ethan was impressed by her ability to learn and innovate under pressure. He watched her carefully, realizing that the key to their survival was not just technology or strategy, but their partnership. Alone, either of them might have failed, but together they had a chance. Humans had always relied on ingenuity, courage, and adaptability, and this moment was a perfect example. They had taken two very different beings and created a force capable of resisting even the most advanced pursuers. As the first light of dawn filtered through the ice, Ethan and the alien woman took a moment to rest. She leaned against the wall, her glowing eyes scanning the cave for any signs of danger, while Ethan checked their devices one last time. He felt a sense of accomplishment. This was more than survival. It was proof that humans, even isolated on a frozen world, could think, adapt, and overcome challenges far beyond their own understanding. Outside, the drones continued to search, but they had not found the ice caves. Ethan realized that their ingenuity had given them an advantage. The alien woman looked at him, and he could see a silent acknowledgement in her eyes. She understood what he had shown her. Humans were clever, adaptable, and resourceful. For the first time, Ethan felt a deep sense of connection with someone from beyond the stars. It was not just trust, it was respect, forged in danger and mutual effort. He knew the challenges ahead would be even greater, but he also knew that together, they had the skills, intelligence, and determination to face them. The sun rose higher, casting sharp light across the frozen landscape. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill his lungs. They had survived the first encounter, but the real test was yet to come. The enemy was out there, relentless and powerful, but he had a plan. Humans had always faced impossible odds, and somehow they had always found a way to prevail. As he looked at the alien woman, he knew that they were ready. They had proven that intelligence, creativity, and courage could overcome even the most dangerous foes. Together, they would face the coming threats, and Ethan felt certain that humans, underestimated and often dismissed by the galaxy, had the power to survive and even triumph against forces far beyond their understanding. In the quiet of the ice caves, surrounded by the frozen world and the looming threat of their pursuers, Ethan and the alien woman prepared for the next step. Every movement, every plan, every shared glance was part of a strategy that could save their lives. And deep in his heart, Ethan knew that human ingenuity would once again shine where others might fail. The ice caves were silent except for the soft hum of the devices Ethan and the alien woman had set. Outside, the frozen world stretched endlessly, white and sharp under the weak sunlight. Ethan studied the maps they had made the night before, tracing possible routes for escape. The drones had not found them yet, but he knew it was only a matter of time. Their pursuers were relentless, and every second counted. The alien woman moved beside him, her glowing eyes scanning the cave walls. She had learned much about his tools and methods, and now she was using her knowledge to enhance their defenses. Ethan watched as she adjusted a device that emitted a small, almost invisible field of energy. He did not fully understand its function, but it was clear it would interfere with any approaching drones. The teamwork between them had grown seamless, a perfect balance of human ingenuity and alien technology. Ethan checked their traps again, tightening wires and adjusting sensors. He knew they could not stay in the caves forever. The ice would not hold indefinitely, and the enemy was too powerful to evade for long. They needed a plan, something bold, something that would give them a chance not just to survive, but to escape. "Do you understand?" he asked her quietly. She nodded, her hand hovering over the devices. Together, they began preparing a new strategy. Ethan explained in gestures and simple words, while she responded with sounds and signs, forming a silent dialogue of understanding. They would need speed, cleverness, and precision. Failure was not an option. Hours passed as they worked. Ethan modified his equipment, using available materials to create improvised sensors and decoys. The alien woman assisted, placing small energy pulses along the perimeter and adjusting their frequency. Every device was tested, every trap double-checked. By the time night fell, their small ice cave had become a fortified shelter, almost undetectable to the enemy. Then the first sign of trouble appeared. A low hum, deep and mechanical, resonated through the ice. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "They're coming," he whispered. The alien woman stiffened, her glowing eyes focusing on the entrance. She gestured for him to follow, and they moved to a hidden passage that Ethan had prepared as an emergency exit. Outside, the blizzard had returned, not as strong as before, but enough to cover their movements. Ethan led her across the snow, using the terrain to shield them. The drones appeared in the distance, scanning the area with precision. He signaled to her to stay low, and they crouched behind a snowdrift, waiting for the right moment to move. Ethan knew they could not outrun the drones in open terrain. They had to think, to act strategically. Using small, reflective panels and snow mounds, he created decoys that would appear as heat signatures or movement to the enemy sensors. The alien woman watched, learning quickly, and helped him adjust the traps. Together, they made the drone's path uncertain, forcing them to hesitate. The first drone approached, scanning the snow with a slow sweep. Ethan held his breath and triggered a small device that created a false energy signature. The drone paused, then moved toward the decoy, its sensors temporarily fooled. The alien woman made a soft sound of approval, and Ethan felt a surge of pride. Their plan was working. They moved quickly while the drone investigated the decoy. Ethan led her across the frozen plains toward a ridge that would provide better cover. The wind whipped against them, snow blinding their eyes, but they pressed on. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. The alien woman followed, her trust in him absolute. Together, they were faster and smarter than their enemies had anticipated. As they neared the ridge, another drone appeared, hovering closer than before. Ethan ducked instinctively, signaling her to do the same. They pressed themselves into a narrow crevice, barely visible against the snow. The drone scanned the area, its lights sweeping across the frozen landscape. Ethan felt his heart pounding. One mistake, one exposed movement, and they could be detected. Then, with careful timing, Ethan triggered another trap. A small pulse of energy radiated from the device they had set, interfering with the drone's sensors. It twitched and hovered erratically before retreating, temporarily confused. The alien woman let out a relieved sound, and Ethan smiled quietly. Their combination of human strategy and her alien technology was proving effective. Hours passed as they continued their escape. They used every trick they could think of: snow camouflage, false heat signatures, and improvised barriers. The alien woman's device pulsed softly, providing feedback on the drone's movements and helping them anticipate their enemies' next steps. Ethan realized that their partnership had reached a level of precision few teams could achieve. By dawn, they had reached a small frozen canyon, narrow and winding, perfect for concealment. Ethan checked the area carefully, making sure there were no hidden sensors or patrols. The alien woman moved beside him, her glowing eyes scanning every detail. Together, they set up a temporary camp, reinforcing the ice walls and preparing for the night ahead. As they rested, Ethan began to understand more about her mission. Using gestures and simple drawings, she showed him her homeworld, her people, and the fleet that had pursued her. The threat was immense, far beyond anything he had imagined. Yet he felt no fear. Humans had always faced the impossible, and he was confident they could survive this challenge as well. He taught her a few human strategies for dealing with pursuit, simple but effective techniques that relied on improvisation and quick thinking. She listened intently, absorbing every detail, then adapted the methods to her own technology. Their combined knowledge created a plan neither side would have anticipated. Night fell, and the wind howled through the canyon. Ethan and the alien woman remained alert, taking turns monitoring the surroundings. They communicated silently, pointing to sensors, marking paths, and adjusting devices as needed. Every movement was precise, every decision deliberate. They had become a single unit, working together seamlessly. Suddenly, a faint noise reached them. A patrol was approaching, their footsteps crunching lightly against the snow. Ethan signaled for her to stay low, and they pressed themselves against the ice walls. The patrol passed, unaware of the hidden camp. Ethan exhaled quietly, feeling a surge of relief. The alien woman touched his arm, a gesture of thanks and recognition. Their trust had grown into something strong and unshakable. They spent the rest of the night preparing for the final stage of their escape. Ethan rigged a series of devices along the canyon, small but effective tools designed to confuse and slow any pursuers. The alien woman assisted, placing her own technology in key positions to enhance the traps. Together, they had created a network of defenses that even the most advanced enemies would struggle to overcome. As the first light of morning touched the frozen landscape, Ethan felt a sense of readiness. They had survived the blizzard, evaded drones, and adapted to the harsh environment. Now the final challenge awaited, breaking free from the enemy's pursuit entirely and reaching a safe zone where they could regroup and plan their next move. He glanced at the alien woman, who returned his look with glowing eyes full of determination. No words were needed. They had faced danger together, learned from each other, and built a plan that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. The impossible now seemed possible. Together, they stepped out of the canyon, moving carefully across the frozen plains. The sun rose higher, casting light on the snow and ice. Ethan's mind was focused, calculating every movement, every step. The alien woman mirrored his actions, and together they moved as one, blending strategy, speed, and intelligence. The enemy would soon realize their absence, and the drones would be deployed again. But Ethan was ready. He had adapted to the environment, used his tools creatively, and combined forces with someone whose knowledge far exceeded his own. Humanity's strength was not just in its technology or numbers, it was in its ability to think, to adapt, and to overcome. As they progressed, they encountered natural obstacles, crevices, cliffs, and hidden patches of ice. Ethan guided the alien woman carefully, showing her how to navigate safely. They used every element of the terrain to their advantage, hiding from sensors and avoiding open areas. Their movement was deliberate, controlled, and intelligent. Hours later, they reached a frozen river, wide and treacherous. Ethan studied it carefully, noting areas of solid ice and weak spots. The alien woman watched closely, learning how humans assess risk and make quick decisions. Together, they devised a path across, testing the ice and moving carefully. Every step was critical, every decision precise. Finally, they reached the far side, exhausted but successful. The pursuit would continue, but they had gained ground and their confidence had grown. Ethan knew that humans had a unique ability to survive through intelligence, creativity, and adaptability. The alien woman had witnessed this firsthand, and he could see her respect for humanity growing. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the frozen landscape, Ethan and the alien woman prepared to rest. They had survived another day, outsmarting their pursuers and proving that even in the harshest environment, human ingenuity could prevail. The next stage of their journey would be even more dangerous, but they were ready. Together, they had turned the impossible into reality, and the galaxy would soon learn that humans were not to be underestimated. The frozen world stretched endlessly before Ethan and the alien woman, the pale light of dawn reflecting off the snow and ice. Their journey had been long and perilous, but they had survived by thinking, improvising, and trusting one another. Every step had tested their courage, every challenge had demanded intelligence, and every moment had strengthened their bond. Now, the ultimate challenge lay ahead, reaching safety and ensuring the alien woman could return to her people before her pursuers caught up. Ethan scanned the horizon, noting the faint shadows of the enemy drones in the distance. They were not far behind, and he knew the pursuers would soon deploy more advanced units. Time was critical. He glanced at the alien woman, who met his gaze with glowing eyes full of determination. Together, They had survived storms, drones, and a frozen landscape that seemed designed to crush anyone unprepared. Now, they would rely on their combined ingenuity to escape entirely. He led her toward a narrow valley, partially shielded by cliffs and ridges. The terrain would slow the drones and limit their visibility. Ethan had studied maps of the area and identified a hidden canyon that led toward a natural landing zone, a place where a small craft could reach them safely. It was a risky plan, but the only one with a chance of success. The alien woman adjusted her device, its soft glow pulsing in response to his movements. She had learned to anticipate his strategy, and he had adapted to her knowledge. Together, they had become a seamless team, using each other's strengths to overcome obstacles that neither could face alone. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was forged in shared danger, intelligence, and trust. As they entered the valley, Ethan noticed subtle changes in the snow, signs of movement that indicated the pursuers were close. He motioned for her to stay low, and they crouched behind a ridge, observing the drones moving cautiously across the open plains. Ethan had prepared a series of decoys along their path, small reflective panels and heat emitters designed to confuse the drones. He triggered the first, sending the closest drone in the wrong direction. The alien woman's soft, musical sound expressed approval, and she adjusted her own device to amplify the interference. The drones hesitated, their sensors struggling to distinguish reality from false signals. Ethan smiled quietly. They were working together perfectly, combining human creativity with alien technology to outsmart a far superior enemy. They moved quickly but carefully, using every shadow, ridge, and ice formation for cover. Ethan guided her across fragile ice patches, over frozen streams, and through narrow crevices. Each step was precise, calculated to avoid detection. The drones above scanned the terrain, but the duo's ingenuity kept them hidden. Every human tactic Ethan employed, improvisation, decoys, and environmental awareness, was enhanced by her advanced knowledge, creating a defense no enemy had anticipated. As the sun rose higher, they reached the canyon leading to the hidden landing zone. Ethan checked the route carefully, noting areas of weakness and potential ambushes. The alien woman watched, understanding his concerns and assisting by using her device to detect hidden energy fields and mechanical traps. Together, they prepared for the final leg of their journey. The drones, now aware of their presence, intensified their search. Ethan whispered to the alien woman, signaling her to follow a narrow, concealed path along the canyon walls. The passage was treacherous, but it offered cover from aerial surveillance. She moved carefully, matching his pace, their synchronization perfect. Each step was a test of skill and intelligence, and they passed with precision. Halfway through the canyon, Ethan noticed faint disturbances in the snow, signs that a drone patrol had been here moments before. He signaled her to pause. They crouched in a shadowed alcove, barely breathing, and waited as the patrol passed. The alien woman touched his arm lightly, a gesture of reassurance and gratitude. Ethan nodded, acknowledging their shared understanding. Trust and respect had become their greatest tools. Once the patrol moved on, they continued. Ethan had rigged a series of traps along the canyon, small energy pulses, reflective panels, and improvised alarms designed to confuse and delay the pursuers. The alien woman adjusted the devices, amplifying their effectiveness. Their combined strategy worked flawlessly. Drones approaching the canyon hesitated, became confused, or retreated entirely. Finally, they reached the edge of the canyon where the natural landing zone lay ahead. A small craft, camouflaged beneath ice and snow, waited silently. Ethan checked it carefully, making sure the controls were operational. The alien woman's device pulsed in response, indicating it was compatible with the craft's systems. Together, they prepared for takeoff. Suddenly, a patrol appeared in the distance, moving quickly toward them. Ethan glanced at the alien woman, who met his gaze with unwavering determination. There was no time for hesitation. He activated the remaining decoys and energy pulses, creating a chaotic field of interference that disrupted the patrol's sensors. The drones faltered, giving them precious seconds. They sprinted across the snow toward the hidden craft. Ethan's heart pounded as he lifted the hatch, helping the alien woman inside. She moved quickly, her glowing hands adjusting the controls instinctively. Ethan climbed in beside her, and together they activated the engines. The craft hummed to life, lifting off the frozen ground with surprising speed. As they ascended, Ethan watched the drones below, their sensors still struggling to track the craft. The alien woman guided them skillfully, combining her knowledge with the improvised systems he had prepared. The escape was tense, every second filled with danger, but their teamwork ensured success. Human ingenuity had proven equal to the challenge. High above the frozen world, they finally found a safe corridor through the atmosphere. Ethan exhaled, feeling the tension drain from his body. The alien woman looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with gratitude and respect. Words were unnecessary. They had survived together, outsmarted a superior enemy, and proven the strength of their alliance. She activated a communication link on her device, sending a signal to her people. The response was immediate. Reinforcements were on their way, and the threat that had pursued her would be neutralized. Ethan realized that humans, often underestimated in the galaxy, had played a key role in her survival. Their resourcefulness, courage, and adaptability had turned the tide. The alien woman smiled, a soft, musical sound that Ethan understood perfectly. They had done it. They had escaped. They had survived. Humanity, once thought fragile in the vast galaxy, had demonstrated ingenuity and resilience beyond expectation. Ethan felt pride not only in himself, but in all humans, knowing their species had an unmatched ability to adapt and overcome. As the craft traveled through space, the alien woman shared glimpses of her civilization with him, showing cities, fleets, and technologies he had never imagined. She explained the stakes of her mission and the importance of the warning she carried. Ethan listened, absorbing every detail, realizing the galaxy was far more complex and dangerous than he had ever imagined. Yet, he also understood that humans had something unique: creativity, quick thinking, and determination. They might not have the most advanced technology, but they could use what they had to achieve incredible results. The alien woman's people had underestimated humans, and now, through Ethan's courage and intelligence, they had learned a valuable lesson. Hours later, they reached her homeworld. Ethan guided the craft to a safe landing, and the alien woman stepped out, greeted by her people. They thanked Ethan, their expressions a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe. The human had not only survived their harsh world, but had played a pivotal role in saving her civilization. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Humans, often overlooked, had proven their value once again. The alien woman turned to him one last time, her glowing eyes shining with respect. She made a gesture he understood perfectly, a silent acknowledgement of trust, friendship, and gratitude. Ethan nodded, knowing that this moment would be remembered across the stars. As he watched the fleet prepare for departure, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had always been underestimated, but that underestimation was their greatest advantage. They could think, improvise, and act in ways no one expected. He had seen it firsthand, and now the galaxy had witnessed it too. The alien woman activated her device, sending final instructions to her people. Ethan assisted where he could, showing the application of human ingenuity to her advanced systems. Together, they ensured the mission's success. It was a perfect combination of skill, knowledge, and courage. As the sun set over her planet, Ethan looked up at the stars. The journey had been long, dangerous, and uncertain, but it had proven one thing: humans had the ability to survive and excel, even in the most extreme conditions. They were clever, adaptable, and resourceful, qualities that no enemy could ever fully anticipate. The alien woman's fleet lifted off, carrying her home safely. Ethan stayed behind, watching as they disappeared into the sky. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that humanity had left a mark on a galaxy that had once underestimated them. His ingenuity, courage, and quick thinking had made the difference. Alone once more, Ethan returned to his hut, the frozen world around him quiet and still. He had faced impossible odds, adapted to extreme danger, and proven the strength of human intellect and courage. And he knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning. Humanity had survived, thrived, and shown its worth. The galaxy would never forget it. As night fell over the icy plains, Ethan stared at the stars, thinking of the alien woman and the civilization she had saved. He understood now that humans had something truly extraordinary: the ability to turn the impossible into reality. The universe was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but humanity had the intelligence, courage, and determination to face it all. He smiled, feeling the warmth of the fire inside the hut and the knowledge that he had played a role in something much larger than himself. The galaxy had underestimated humans once, but it would not do so again. Humanity was strong, clever, and resilient, a force to be reckoned with even among the stars. The alien woman had trusted him, relied on him, and together they had survived. Their alliance had proven that even in a galaxy of advanced civilizations, humans had a unique strength: creativity, courage, and the ability to adapt. And as Ethan looked up at the night sky, he knew that this was only the beginning of humanity's story among the stars.